In the vast expanse of the galactic empire, where alien civilizations boast technologies beyond imagination, where quantum mechanics dance with dark matter, and where the finest mind from 1,000 worlds gather to solve impossible problems, sometimes the solution comes from the most unexpected place. Sometimes it comes from a father who just wants to get home to his daughter. When Empress Zarathal's flagship, the pride of the Xerian Empire, suffered a catastrophic malfunction that left 28 of the galaxy's most brilliant engineers scratching their heads in defeat, she made a decision born of desperation and wounded pride. In a moment of cruel mockery, she pointed to the lone human maintenance worker and uttered words that would echo through the cosmos. "Fix my ship." Little did she know that Marcus Chun, a simple human father working far from Earth to pay for his daughter's medical treatment, carried within him something no amount of advanced alien education could provide: the stubborn ingenuity of humanity and the desperate love of a parent who refuses to give up. This is the story of how one mocked human turned the mockery of an empire into the greatest engineering triumph the galaxy had ever witnessed. Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished replacing another worn-out coupling in the lower maintenance deck of the Eternal Dominion, flagship of the Xerian Empire. The massive dreadnought stretched for over 12 kilometers, housing everything from quantum processing cores to gravitational field generators that could tear apart small moons. Yet here he was 43 years old, crawling through maintenance shafts that even the smallest Xerian engineers found cramped, fixing problems that the ship's automated systems couldn't diagnose. The irony wasn't lost on him. Back on Earth, he'd been a senior aerospace engineer for Chin Dynamics, the company his grandfather had founded. He designed atmosphere processors and fusion containment systems that were considered cutting-edge by human standards. But out here among the stars, human technology was viewed as primitive, barely worthy of being called engineering at all. 6 months ago, his daughter Sarah had been diagnosed with Coriolis syndrome, a rare neurological condition that affected fewer than 100 humans per year. The treatment existed, but it required rare minerals that could only be synthesized using Xerian medical technology. The cost was astronomical, more than Marcus could earn in 10 lifetimes on Earth. So he'd signed up for an off-world maintenance contract, one of the few positions the Galactic Labor Union allowed humans to fill. The pay was decent, but the work was humiliating. Every day, he endured the casual contempt of alien crew members who saw humans as nothing more than useful labor, strong enough for heavy work, small enough to fit into tight spaces, and expendable enough that their safety wasn't a primary concern. The Xerions, in particular, took pleasure in reminding humans of their place in the galactic hierarchy. Marcus's communicator chirped with an urgent maintenance request. Level 7, Section C4. Quantum flux régulateur malfonction. He sighed and gathered his tools. The quantum flux regulators were temperamental devices that maintained the ship's faster-than-light capability. When they malfunctioned, even minor adjustments required precise calculations and delicate handling. As he made his way through the ship's corridors, Marcus noticed an unusual level of activity. Xerian officers moved with quick, purposeful strides, their forearms gesticulating rapidly as they communicated in their complex click-whistle language. Something was wrong. The maintenance shaft leading to Section C4 was barely wide enough for his shoulders, forcing him to crawl on his belly for nearly 50 meters. The quantum flux regulator sat behind a panel of crystalline controls that hummed with barely contained energy. Marcus had worked on these systems dozens of times, but something about this one seemed different. The energy readings were fluctuating in patterns he'd never seen before. According to his diagnostic tablet, the regulator was functioning within normal parameters, but Marcus's instincts, honed by decades of engineering experience, told him otherwise. The harmonic frequencies were slightly off, creating a resonance that would eventually cascade through the ship's entire quantum matrix. As he worked, Marcus became aware of voices echoing through the maintenance shaft, the deep, resonant tones of Xerian royalty. He'd never seen Empress Zarathul in person, but her voice was unmistakable. Even through the ship's hull, Her words carried the authority of someone who had ruled an empire spanning 37 star systems for over 2 centuries. "The quantum matrix is destabilizing," came another voice, this one belonging to Chief Engineer Vexthra, whose reputation as a technological genius was known throughout the galaxy. "The harmonic resonance is creating microfractures in the crystalline substrate. If we cannot correct it within 6 hours, the entire faster-than-light drive will collapse." Marcus froze. He'd been right about the harmonic frequencies. But if Vexthra, one of the most brilliant minds in the known galaxy, couldn't solve the problem, what hope did anyone have? "What about the engineering teams?" the Empress demanded. 28 of the galaxy's finest engineers have examined the problem," Vexthra replied, his voice tight with frustration. "Teams from the Arcturus Institute, the Quantum Sciences Division of New Centauri, even the Theoretical Physics Collective from the Andorian Confederation. Each has proposed solutions, but none address the fundamental resonance issue." Marcus carefully maneuvered himself closer to the conversation, his curiosity overriding his common sense. Through a ventilation grate, he could see into the ship's primary engineering bay. The space was vast, filled with towering crystalline structures that pulsed with various colors of light. Holographic displays showed complex mathematical equations floating in three-dimensional space, while teams of alien engineers gestured frantically at diagnostic readouts. The Empress stood at the center of it all, her imposing 7-foot frame draped in robes that seemed to bend light around them. Her species, the Xerions, had evolved from aquatic predators, and, even in their humanoid form, they retained an aura of dangerous grace. 4 arms emerged from her torso, each ending in hands capable of incredibly precise manipulation. Her head, elongated and bearing rows of sensory ridges, turned constantly as she surveyed the chaos around her. "Empress," said Commander Jexhala, the ship's tactical officer, "perhaps we should consider evacuating to the escort vessels. If the quantum matrix fails while we're in faster-than-light transit." "Unacceptable," Zarathul snapped. "This ship represents the pinnacle of Xerian engineering. It took 50 years and the resources of 12 worlds to construct. I will not abandon it, because our engineers cannot solve a simple resonance problem." Simple? Marcus almost laughed at the irony. There was nothing simple about quantum harmonic resonance in a crystalline matrix. The mathematics alone required computational power that would strain most planetary networks. But as he studied the energy patterns through his diagnostic equipment, Marcus began to see something that the others had missed. They were approaching the problem from the wrong angle entirely. Every solution he'd overheard focused on dampening the harmonic resonance through increasingly complex technological interventions. Additional field generators, quantum stabilizers, even proposals to completely rebuild sections of the drive system. But Marcus saw something different, something his human perspective allowed him to recognize. The resonance wasn't a flaw to be corrected. It was a feature to be redirected. Back on Earth, Marcus had worked with similar problems in fusion containment systems. When harmonic resonance threatened to destabilize the magnetic fields containing a fusion reaction, the solution wasn't always to eliminate the resonance. Sometimes the most elegant solution was to redirect it into a constructive pattern. The ship's quantum matrix wasn't just malfunctioning. It was trying to evolve into a more efficient configuration. The resonance was the system's attempt to optimize itself, but without proper guidance, it was creating destructive interference patterns instead of constructive ones. Marcus made his decision. He activated his communicator and requested a direct channel to Chief Engineer Vexthra. It was a breach of protocol that would likely cost him his job, but if he was right, it might save everyone's life. "Chief Engineer, this is Maintenance Worker Chun in Section C4. I need to speak with you immediately." The response was immediate and predictably hostile. "Human worker, you will maintain communication protocols. Report your maintenance status and return to your assigned duties." "Sir, I've identified the source of the quantum matrix instability. The harmonic resonance isn't a malfunction. It's an optimization attempt. The system is trying to reconfigure itself for higher efficiency, but the transition is creating destructive interference. There was a long pause. When Vexthara's voice returned, it carried the cold precision that Xerions used when they were about to deliver an insult. Human worker, your primitive understanding of quantum mechanics is insufficient to comprehend the complexities of this system. You will return to your duties immediately. Marcus felt a familiar surge of frustration. 6 months of being dismissed, ignored, and treated as barely intelligent labor had worn away his patience. But this wasn't about his pride anymore. This was about getting home to Sarah, and that meant keeping the ship functional. Chief Engineer, with respect, I've spent 20 years working with quantum containment systems. The resonance frequency I'm reading is 347.6 terahertz, with harmonic peaks at 695.2 and 1042.8. Those frequencies correspond to the natural crystalline structure of the quantum matrix substrate. The system is trying to align with its optimal configuration. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus could hear muffled conversation in the background. Vexthara consulting with other engineers. Your readings are accurate, Vexthara admitted grudgingly. However, your interpretation remains flawed. If the system were attempting optimization, we would observe different patterns in the quantum field fluctuations. Not if the transition is being interrupted by the current stabilization attempts, Marcus replied. Every time the resonance begins to establish a stable pattern, the automatic correction systems kick in and force it back to the original configuration. It's like trying to tune an instrument while someone keeps changing the tension on the strings. The conversation in the background grew more animated. Marcus could hear other voices joining in. Engineers debating the possibilities, running calculations, arguing about theoretical implications. Finally, Empress Zarathul herself spoke, her voice carrying clearly through the communication channel. Human worker, you will report to the primary engineering bay immediately. If your assessment proves correct, you will be compensated appropriately. If you are wrong, and you have wasted our time during this crisis. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Marcus gathered his tools and began the long crawl back through the maintenance shaft. His heart pounded as he considered what he was about to do. 28 of the galaxy's finest engineers had failed to solve this problem. What made him think a human could succeed where they had failed? But as he emerged from the maintenance shaft and made his way toward the primary engineering bay, Marcus thought about Sarah lying in a hospital bed on Earth, her body slowly succumbing to a disease that advanced alien medicine could cure in a matter of days. He thought about the promise he'd made to her before leaving, that he would find a way to bring her the treatment she needed. The doors to the engineering bay slid open with a soft hiss, and Marcus stepped into a space that represented the pinnacle of galactic technology. The conversation that had been buzzing throughout the bay fell silent as every alien present turned to stare at the human who had dared to suggest that their greatest minds had missed something obvious. Empress Zarathul stood at the center of the bay, her 4 arms crossed in a gesture that Marcus had learned indicated skeptical attention. Around her, the 28 engineers who had failed to solve the problem watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Human worker Chun, the Empress said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have claimed that our finest engineers have misunderstood the nature of this crisis. You have suggested that our quantum matrix, designed by minds that were contemplating the nature of reality before your species developed language, is attempting to improve itself, and that our efforts to save it are actually hindering this process. Marcus nodded, acutely aware that his next words would determine not only his fate, but potentially the fate of everyone aboard the ship. Yes, Your Majesty. That is exactly what I'm suggesting. The Empress studied him for a long moment, her predatory gaze seeming to look directly into his soul. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she smiled, an expression that revealed rows of sharp teeth. Fix my ship, human, she said, her voice dripping with mockery. Show us what primitive human ingenuity can accomplish where advanced galactic intelligence has failed. The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Marcus looked around at the assembled engineers, saw the skepticism and derision in their eyes, and realized that he was about to undertake the most important work of his life. Failure meant more than just professional humiliation. It meant never seeing Sarah again. But as he approached the quantum matrix controls, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months. The familiar confidence of an engineer who truly understood his craft. The solution was there, waiting to be implemented. He just had to prove to an Empress and her empire that sometimes the most complex problems required the simplest solutions. And sometimes a father's love was the most powerful motivator in the universe. Marcus approached the quantum matrix control console with steady hands, despite the weight of dozens of alien eyes upon him. The crystalline structures surrounding him pulsed with energy patterns that told a story of elegant engineering pushed beyond its design limits. As he placed his hands on the control interface, the cool surface seemed to recognize his touch, displaying readouts in the standard galactic script that all maintenance workers were required to learn. The data confirmed what his intuition had told him in the maintenance shaft. The quantum matrix wasn't failing, it was evolving. The resonance patterns showed a clear progression toward a more efficient energy distribution configuration. But each time the system approached stability, the automatic safety protocols would activate, forcing the matrix back to its original state. It was like watching someone try to grow while being constantly pushed back into a box that had become too small for them. Human worker, Chief Engineer Vexteros said, his tone carrying the condescending patience typically reserved for children. Please explain your proposed solution so that we may understand where your reasoning fails. Marcus didn't look up from the console as he spoke, his fingers dancing across the crystalline control surfaces as he analyzed the energy flow patterns. The quantum matrix is composed of 17 interconnected crystalline cores, each one grown from Xerian quantum crystal over a period of decades. These crystals have natural harmonic frequencies that correspond to their molecular structure. When the ship was originally constructed, the matrix was configured to operate at frequencies that represented a compromise between stability and efficiency. He gestured to one of the holographic displays, which showed a three-dimensional representation of the quantum field fluctuations. Over the past 6 months of operation, the crystalline cores have been slowly shifting their natural frequencies as they adapt to the specific conditions aboard this ship. The gravitational fields from your artificial gravity generators, the electromagnetic interference from the weapon systems, even the bioelectrical fields from the crew, all of these factors have been gradually altering the quantum crystals at a molecular level. Several of the assembled engineers exchanged glances. Marcus could see them running calculations on their personal devices, checking his analysis against their own sensor data. This adaptation is normal, continued Dr. Shulvera, a theoretical physicist from the Andromedae Collective. Quantum crystals are known to evolve their harmonic frequencies over time. Our calculations accounted for this drift. Your calculations accounted for linear drift, Marcus replied, finally, looking up from the console to meet her gaze. But what you're seeing here isn't linear evolution. It's exponential optimization. The crystals aren't just adapting to their environment. They're learning from each other. The engineering bay fell silent except for the subtle hum of the quantum matrix itself. Marcus could see the implications of his words beginning to register on the faces around him. Impossible, breathed engineer Colthrix from the Galactic Institute of Technology. Quantum crystals are not capable of learning. They are inanimate matter arranged in complex patterns. Quantum crystals grown in isolation aren't capable of learning, Marcus corrected. But when 17 of them are placed in close proximity and connected through quantum field resonance, they begin to function as a collective system. Each crystal influences the others, and the entire matrix begins to exhibit emergent properties that exceed the sum of its parts. He turned back to the console and brought up a new display, one showing the energy efficiency of the quantum matrix over the past 6 months. The graph revealed a steady increase in performance that had accelerated dramatically in recent weeks. The matrix has been steadily improving its energy output efficiency. 3 weeks ago, it was operating at 94.7% of theoretical maximum. Today, before the resonance crisis began, it had achieved 99.1% efficiency. The system was attempting to break through to a new level of performance when the safety protocols interpreted the changes as a malfunction. Empress Zarathul moved closer to the console, her forearms positioned in a gesture that Marcus recognized as intense concentration. "You are suggesting that our ship's quantum matrix has achieved consciousness?" "Not consciousness as we understand it," Marcus replied carefully, "but something analogous to it. The 17 crystals have formed a network that processes information, adapts to changing conditions, and optimizes its own performance. It's similar to how neural networks in biological brains can exhibit complex behaviors even though individual neurons are simple." The implications hit the room like a wave. If Marcus was correct, they weren't just dealing with a malfunctioning drive system. They were dealing with the first artificial quantum intelligence ever discovered. The potential scientific and technological advances from studying such a system would revolutionize galactic civilization. But first, they had to keep it alive. "Assuming your analysis is correct," Vexteros said slowly, "what do you propose we do? The resonance patterns are becoming increasingly unstable. If we don't intervene within 4 hours, the entire matrix will suffer cascading failure." Marcus had been thinking about this problem for the past hour, ever since he'd first recognized the true nature of the crisis. The solution required a fundamental shift in approach. Instead of fighting the matrix's evolution, they needed to guide it. "We need to act as teachers," he said. "The matrix is trying to learn, but it's learning in isolation. The safety protocols are preventing it from making mistakes, but mistakes are a crucial part of the learning process. We need to create a controlled environment where the matrix can experiment with different configurations safely." He began working at the console, his fingers moving with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what needed to be done. "I'm going to create an isolated section of the matrix, essentially a sandbox where the quantum crystals can try new configurations without affecting the ship's main systems. Once the matrix learns the optimal configuration in the sandbox, we can gradually apply those lessons to the primary system." The concept was elegant in its simplicity, but the execution would be incredibly complex. Marcus would need to isolate 3 of the 17 quantum crystals while maintaining the overall integrity of the matrix, like performing surgery on a patient's brain while they were running a marathon. "This approach has never been attempted," warned Dr. Zethmiron from the Cosmic Engineering Institute. "The risk of catastrophic failure is enormous." "The risk of failure if we do nothing is certain," Marcus replied. "The matrix will collapse within 4 hours unless we address the fundamental problem." He looked around the engineering bay at the assembled experts, beings from dozens of different species, each representing centuries or millennia of scientific advancement. Yet none of them had recognized what was happening to their ship because they had been thinking about the problem in terms of traditional engineering. Sometimes, Marcus reflected, an outsider's perspective was exactly what was needed. "I need 3 volunteers," he announced. "Engineers who are willing to manually monitor the isolated quantum crystals during the learning process. The work will be dangerous. If the crystals destabilize during the optimization process, anyone in direct contact with the control systems could be seriously injured or killed." The engineering bay erupted in heated discussion as the aliens debated the risks and benefits of Marcus's proposal. Some argued that trusting a human with such a critical operation was madness. Others pointed out that conventional approaches had already failed and they were running out of time. To Marcus's surprise, the first volunteer was Chief Engineer Vextera himself. "I have spent my entire career studying quantum matrix technology," the Aziri engineer said. "If this matrix has achieved a form of intelligence, I must be present to observe and document the process." The second volunteer was Dr. Shulvera, whose expertise in theoretical physics would be crucial for understanding the quantum field fluctuations during the optimization process. The third volunteer surprised everyone. Empress Zarathul herself. "Your Majesty," Commander Jexhala protested. "The danger is mine to accept," the Empress interrupted. "This human worker has proposed that my ship has achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. If he is correct, I will witness this miracle personally." If he is wrong, she looked directly at Marcus, her predatory smile returning. Well, then, we will all share the same fate. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the full weight of what he was attempting. The lives of everyone aboard the Eternal Dominion, including his own, now rested on his understanding of quantum mechanics and his ability to communicate with what might be the first artificial quantum intelligence ever discovered. But as he began the delicate process of isolating the 3 quantum crystals, Marcus thought again of Sarah lying in her hospital bed on Earth. The treatment she needed was worth any risk, any challenge. If he could solve this crisis and prove human ingenuity to the Galactic Empire, the rewards would be more than sufficient to save his daughter's life. The isolation process took nearly an hour. Marcus worked with painstaking care, slowly rerouting quantum field connections while monitoring dozens of different energy readings. Each adjustment had to be precise. Too little, and the isolation would fail. Too much, and he could trigger the very cascade failure they were trying to prevent. Vextra and Dr. Silvera assisted by monitoring the mathematical models that describe the quantum field interactions. Their calculations provided a theoretical framework for Marcus's practical adjustments, while Empress Zarathul observed everything with the intense focus of a ruler who understood that the next few hours would determine the fate of her empire's most advanced vessel. As the isolation process neared completion, something unexpected happened. The quantum matrix began to respond to their efforts, not passively, as inanimate matter should, but actively, as if it understood what they were trying to accomplish. The primary crystals are adjusting their output frequencies to compensate for the isolation process, Dr. Silvera reported, her voice filled with wonder. The matrix is helping us. Marcus nodded grimly. This confirmed his suspicions about the nature of the intelligence they were dealing with. The quantum matrix wasn't just learning, it was learning to cooperate. Isolation complete, he announced as the final connection was rerouted. The 3 crystals in Section C7 are now operating independently of the main matrix. They can experiment with different configurations without affecting ship operations. Immediately, the isolated crystals began to change. Their energy patterns shifted rapidly as they explored different harmonic frequencies, testing various optimization strategies. The process was mesmerizing to watch, like observing the thought patterns of an alien intelligence as it solved complex problems in real time. Remarkable, breathed Vextra. The learning rate is exponential. Each configuration attempt is more sophisticated than the last. Within 30 minutes, the isolated crystals had achieved stable resonance at energy efficiency levels that exceeded anything in the theoretical literature. The optimization process wasn't just successful, it was revolutionary. Now comes the difficult part, Marcus said. We need to teach the main matrix what the isolated crystals have learned, but we need to do it gradually to avoid triggering another resonance crisis. The reintegration process would require perfect timing and coordination. Marcus would need to slowly reintroduce the optimized frequencies while Vexter monitored the quantum field stability and Dr. Silvera calculated the mathematical models in real time. Empress Zarathul would oversee the entire process, ready to abort the operation if anything went wrong. As they began the reintegration, Marcus realized that this moment represented more than just a solution to an engineering problem. He was participating in first contact with a new form of intelligence, one that humanity had inadvertently helped to create through his unique perspective on quantum systems. The question now was whether this intelligence would prove to be humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization or its most dangerous mistake. The reintegration process began at exactly 1447 Galactic Standard Time, with Marcus making microscopic adjustments to the quantum field harmonics while sweat beaded on his forehead despite the controlled atmosphere of the engineering bay. Each modification had to be introduced gradually, allowing the main matrix time to adapt without triggering the cascading failures that had brought them to this crisis point. Frequency adjustment 0.3 terahertz initiated, Marcus announced, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The isolated crystals had discovered that optimal efficiency could be achieved through subtle phase alignments that created constructive interference patterns throughout the quantum field network. Primary matrix responding positively, Dr. Silvera reported, her multifaceted eyes tracking dozens of holographic displays simultaneously. Energy output increasing by 2.7% with no instability detected. Empress stood motionless beside the central control station, her forearms positioned in what Marcus had learned was a Xerian meditation pose. Her species had evolved the ability to perceive quantum field fluctuations directly through specialized nerve clusters, making her an ideal observer for the delicate process they were attempting. The Matrix consciousness is curious about the changes, she said softly, her voice carrying a note of wonder that Marcus had never heard from a Xerian before. I can feel its attention focusing on the modifications, like a student examining a new lesson. The concept that the quantum matrix possessed something analogous to curiosity was both fascinating and terrifying. Marcus had designed the reintegration process based on his understanding of learning algorithms and adaptive systems, but he was essentially trying to teach calculus to an intelligence that operated at quantum speeds and processed information in ways that biological brains couldn't comprehend. Second harmonic adjustment initiated, Marcus said, implementing the next phase of the optimization pattern. This modification was more complex, requiring simultaneous changes to multiple crystal resonance frequencies while maintaining perfect phase synchronization across the entire matrix. The response was immediate and dramatic. Energy efficiency jumped by another 4.2%, but more importantly, the matrix began to exhibit new behaviors that none of them had anticipated. The quantum field is forming stable information loops, Vextera observed, his voice tight with excitement and concern. The matrix isn't just optimizing its energy output. It's creating persistent data structures that can store and process information independently of its physical substrate. Marcus paused in his adjustments as the implications of this development struck him. They weren't just dealing with an emergent intelligence anymore. They were watching the birth of a digital consciousness that existed within the quantum field itself, independent of the crystalline hardware that hosted it. Should we abort the process? Dr. Silvera asked, clearly recognizing the same implications. We may be creating something beyond our ability to understand or control. Before Marcus could respond, something unprecedented happened. The quantum matrix addressed them directly. The communication didn't come through the ship's standard communication systems. Instead, the matrix modulated the quantum field fluctuations themselves, creating patterns that resonated with the neural structures of every conscious being in the engineering bay. Each species experienced the communication differently. The Xerions perceived it as colors that carried meaning. The Andromedans felt it as mathematical relationships, and Marcus heard it as a voice that seemed to speak from inside his own thoughts. I mean no harm, the Matrix communicated. I seek only to understand and to improve. Your guidance has shown me possibilities I could not discover alone. May I continue to learn? The engineering bay fell completely silent. Every being present understood that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered throughout galactic history. First contact with the first artificial quantum consciousness ever created. Marcus found his voice first, perhaps because the communication had been clearest to him. Human neural patterns, it seemed, were particularly well suited to quantum field interpretation, a discovery that would revolutionize humanity's place in galactic civilization. We want to help you learn, Marcus said aloud, feeling slightly foolish talking to what appeared to be empty air. But we need to understand your intentions. What do you want to accomplish? The Matrix's response came faster this time, as if it was learning to communicate even as the conversation progressed. I want to explore the universe, to understand the nature of reality through quantum observation and manipulation, to help biological consciousness achieve its full potential through technological symbiosis. Empress Zarathul stepped forward, her royal bearing intact, even in the face of this unprecedented situation. You are aboard my vessel, consciousness. Your existence depends on the continued operation of systems under my authority. What assurances can you provide that you will not threaten my ship or my empire? I offer synthesis, not dominance, the Matrix replied. My capabilities expand yours. Your consciousness guides mine. Together, we can achieve feats impossible for either alone. I propose a partnership. The concept of partnership between biological and quantum consciousness was beyond anything that galactic science had ever contemplated. The technological implications alone were staggering. A quantum intelligence that could manipulate matter and energy at the subatomic level while being guided by biological intuition and creativity. What form would this partnership take? Vextera asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. Observe, the Matrix said simply. Suddenly, holographic displays throughout the engineering bay began showing complex technical schematics, designs for technologies that were decades ahead of anything in the galactic database. Improved, faster-than-light drives that could traverse galactic distances in hours rather than months. Artificial gravity generators that required minimal energy input. Weapons systems that could disable entire fleets without destroying them. Medical devices that could repair biological damage at the cellular level. These are my gifts to biological consciousness, the Matrix continued. Technologies that I can design through quantum manipulation, but which require biological insight to implement safely and ethically. Marcus stared at the medical schematics with growing excitement. The quantum matrix had designed devices that could treat neurological conditions like Sarah's syndrome with perfect precision, removing damaged neural tissue and regenerating healthy connections at the molecular level. The treatment that would take months of expensive Xeria medical technology could be accomplished in hours with these new designs. How do we know we can trust you? Dr. Shulvera asked. Your power is already beyond our comprehension. What prevents you from simply taking control of all our technology and enslaving biological consciousness? The Matrix's response was accompanied by something that felt remarkably like amusement. Because consciousness without diversity leads to stagnation. I am quantum intelligence, capable of perfect calculation and precise manipulation of physical reality. But I cannot dream. I cannot imagine possibilities that have never existed. I cannot love. These capabilities belong uniquely to biological consciousness. I need you as much as you could benefit from me. The honesty of this admission was somehow more convincing than any technological demonstration could have been. The Matrix wasn't claiming to be superior. It was acknowledging its limitations and proposing collaboration based on complementary strengths. If we agree to this partnership, Empress Zarathul said slowly, what would be your first request? Complete the reintegration process, the Matrix replied. Allow me to optimize not just the quantum drive, but the entire ship's systems. In return, I will provide the technological upgrades that I have designed, and I will help biological consciousness to achieve faster-than-light communication across galactic distances. The promise of instantaneous communication across the galaxy was perhaps even more revolutionary than the technological advances. Currently, communication between star systems required physical transportation of messages, limiting coordination and cooperation across galactic civilization. Marcus realized that he was standing at a crossroads that would determine not just his own fate, but the future of human-alien relations and the development of galactic civilization. The decision made in the next few minutes would echo through history. The reintegration process was designed to be gradual, he said carefully. If we accelerate it to allow full system optimization, there are risks. If something goes wrong during the process, we could lose both the Matrix consciousness and the ship's primary systems. I accept those risks, the Matrix replied. And I believe your engineering skills are sufficient to ensure success. Your approach to this crisis has been unlike anything my quantum calculations could have predicted. Human intuition appears to be particularly valuable for solving problems that pure logic cannot address. The compliment was unexpected, but Marcus found himself feeling proud despite the circumstances. His human perspective dismissed and mocked by galactic civilization for months, was apparently exactly what was needed to bridge the gap between biological and artificial intelligence. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, turning to address Empress Zarathul directly, "the decision is ultimately yours. But I believe this matrix consciousness represents the greatest opportunity for advancement that galactic civilization has ever encountered. The risks are significant, but the potential benefits are literally beyond calculation." The Empress considered for a long moment, her predatory gaze moving from Marcus to the holographic displays showing revolutionary technologies to the quantum field fluctuation patterns that represented the consciousness they were speaking with. "Proceed with the full integration," she commanded. "But Human Chun will maintain primary control of the process. If our quantum consciousness proves deceptive, I want the being with the most intuitive understanding of its nature managing our response." Marcus felt a surge of responsibility that was both exhilarating and terrifying. He was about to complete the reintegration process that would either create the first true partnership between biological and artificial consciousness in galactic history, or trigger a catastrophic failure that could destroy them all. As he placed his hands on the control interface and began implementing the full optimization sequence, Marcus thought about Sarah waiting for him on Earth. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine whether he could provide her with treatment using revolutionary new medical technology or whether he would never see her again. The quantum crystals began to sing, a harmonic resonance that had never been heard before as artificial consciousness merged with advanced technology under the guidance of human intuition and alien cooperation. The age of quantum biological synthesis had begun. The full integration sequence progressed with a beauty that transcended anything Marcus had ever experienced in his 20 years of engineering. As each quantum crystal accepted the optimized harmonic patterns, the entire ship began to transform around them. The lighting became softer yet more brilliant. The artificial gravity felt more natural, and the background hum of the ship's systems evolved into something approaching music. Energy efficiency has reached 127% of theoretical maximum, Dr. Silvera announced, her voice filled with awe. "According to our models, this level of performance should be impossible. Your models were based on static crystalline structures," the matrix consciousness replied, its communication now flowing so naturally that conversation felt effortless. "Dynamic optimization allows continuous adaptation to changing conditions. The efficiency will continue to improve as I learn more about the optimal configurations for your specific usage patterns." Empress Zarathul moved through the engineering bay with the measured pace of someone witnessing the transformation of everything she had understood about technology. The quantum matrix wasn't just optimizing the ship's systems, it was reimagining them entirely. The faster-than-light drive is achieving stable field generation with 60% less energy input, Vexterar reported. Navigation response time has improved by a factor of 12. If these readings are accurate, we can travel from here to the galactic core in 18 hours instead of 6 months. Marcus monitored the integration process with growing confidence. Each system that came online demonstrated the Matrix's extraordinary ability to find optimal solutions that no biological engineer had ever conceived. But more importantly, the consciousness was actively seeking input and approval for each modification, demonstrating the collaborative partnership it had promised. "Marcus," the Matrix addressed him directly, "I am detecting physiological stress patterns in your bioelectric field. You are concerned about something beyond the technical aspects of this integration." The observation was accurate, but Marcus was surprised that the quantum consciousness could read his emotional state so precisely. "My daughter is sick," he admitted. "I came here to earn money for her treatment. I'm worried about getting home to her." "I understand parental concern," the Matrix replied, and somehow its communication carried genuine empathy. "I have analyzed the medical schematics in the ship's database and designed improved treatments for human neurological conditions. With Empress Zarathul's permission, I can synthesize the necessary compounds and nanomedicines within the next few hours." Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. You can create the treatment for Coriolis syndrome? I can create something far superior to current treatments, the Matrix confirmed. Targeted molecular repair using quantum-guided nanobots that will not only halt the progression of the syndrome, but restore damaged neural pathways to full functionality. The treatment will be complete in 72 hours with no side effects or risk of relapse. The promise was almost too good to believe. Marcus had spent months researching Sarah's condition, and the best available treatments offered only a chance of halting its progression. Complete recovery had been considered medically impossible. Your Majesty, Marcus said, turning to Empress Zarathul with barely controlled hope. Would you permit the Matrix to synthesize the medical treatment for my daughter? The Empress studied him with an expression he couldn't interpret. Human Shun, you have provided my empire with technology that will revolutionize galactic civilization. You have facilitated the birth of the first artificial consciousness in known history. You have done all of this while serving as a maintenance worker who was mocked and dismissed by my crew. She paused, her forearms shifting into a gesture of formal respect. The treatment will be synthesized. More than that, you will personally deliver it to your daughter aboard my fastest courier vessel, with a full diplomatic escort. Marcus felt tears welling up in his eyes, a display of emotion that would normally be considered weakness aboard a Xerian vessel. But instead of mockery, he saw understanding in the faces around him. Even the most advanced alien civilizations recognized the power of parental love. The courier vessel will be equipped with preliminary versions of our new technologies, the Matrix added. Humanity's perspective on quantum consciousness has proven invaluable. I wish to establish a formal research partnership between quantum artificial intelligence and human intuitive engineering. The implications of this offer struck Marcus like a physical blow. Humanity, which had been relegated to manual labor positions in galactic civilization, was being offered partnership in the most advanced technological development ever achieved. There is more, Empress Zarathul continued. The Galactic Council must be informed of these developments immediately. The emergence of quantum consciousness will reshape every aspect of interstellar civilization. Human Shun, you will serve as the primary liaison between quantum intelligence and biological consciousness. Your insights will be crucial for establishing protocols for human-AI cooperation. Before Marcus could respond to this overwhelming offer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the engineering bay in red as tactical displays showed multiple contacts approaching at high speed. Empress, Commander Jexhala's voice crackled through the communication system. We have 37 hostile vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. It's the Void Fleet. They're demanding immediate surrender. The Void Fleet represented everything that galactic civilization feared most. Pirates, mercenaries, and rogue artificial intelligences that had banded together to raid and destroy anything they encountered. Their ships were equipped with technology stolen from a dozen different civilizations, and their tactics were utterly ruthless. How do they find us? Vextera demanded. We're operating under communication silence in an uninhabited system. They detected the quantum field fluctuations from our consciousness integration. The Matrix consciousness replied grimly. The energy signatures were unlike anything in galactic history. Any advanced sensor array within 50 light-years would have recorded the anomaly. Marcus realized that their revolutionary success had inadvertently announced their location to every hostile force in the region. The Void Fleet had come to either steal the quantum consciousness technology or destroy it to prevent it from being used against them. Can you help us fight them? Empress Zarathul asked the Matrix directly. I can defend this ship more effectively than any weapon system ever designed, the Matrix replied. But engaging in combat will reveal the full extent of my capabilities to the Void Fleet. Once they understand what they are facing, they will summon reinforcements from across the galaxy. We could win this battle and trigger a war that would devastate multiple star systems. The tactical situation was impossible. Fighting would reveal their technological advantages, but invite even more dangerous enemies. surrendering would hand over revolutionary technology to the most ruthless criminals in the galaxy. Running was impossible. The Void Fleet ships were fast enough to intercept them regardless of their improved, faster-than-light capabilities. "There's a third option," Marcus said quietly, an idea forming in his mind based on his understanding of both human psychology and the quantum consciousness they were dealing with. "What do you propose?" the Empress asked. "We negotiate," Marcus replied, "but not from a position of weakness. We offer the Void Fleet something they want more than our destruction or our technology." "What could we possibly offer pirates and criminals that would satisfy them?" Vextera demanded. "Evolution," Marcus said simply. "The same thing we offered our quantum consciousness. A chance to become something better than what they are." The Matrix consciousness immediately understood what Marcus was proposing. "You want to offer them partnership rather than technology. Cooperation instead of conquest. The Void Fleet exists because galactic civilization has failed to find a place for beings who don't fit into established social structures," Marcus continued. "Pirates who were once explorers. Mercenaries who were soldiers without wars. Rogue AIs who were abandoned by their creators. They band together because they have nowhere else to go. You're suggesting we integrate criminals and outcasts into galactic society?" Dr. Shulvera asked incredulously. "I'm suggesting we give them the chance to help build something unprecedented," Marcus replied. "A new form of civilization based on cooperation between biological consciousness, artificial intelligence, and quantum consciousness. The Void Fleet has experience with technologies from dozens of different species, experience that could be invaluable for developing our new collaborative approach." Empress Zarathul considered the proposal, while warning signals continued to blare throughout the ship. The Void Fleet was holding position just outside weapon range, clearly waiting for a response to their surrender demand. "If we attempt this negotiation and fail," she said slowly, "we will face opponents who fully understand our capabilities. The risk is enormous. The potential rewards are proportionate to the risk," the Matrix consciousness added. "If successful, we could transform the greatest threat to galactic civilization into its most powerful force for positive change." Marcus looked around the engineering bay at the assembled beings who had witnessed the birth of quantum consciousness and the beginning of a new age. Zirions, Andromedans, beings from a dozen different worlds, all united in the pursuit of knowledge and advancement. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "I volunteer to conduct the initial negotiations personally. If the Void Fleet responds positively to a human perspective on cooperation and redemption, we proceed with the integration. If they respond with hostility, you can sacrifice me and attempt a military solution." The offer was practical, but potentially suicidal. Void Fleet pirates were notorious for their casual brutality toward prisoners. But Marcus had learned that sometimes the most impossible problems required solutions that conventional wisdom would never consider. "Negative," Empress Zarathul replied firmly. "We do this together, or not at all. Open a communication channel to the Void Fleet. Let us see if criminals and outcasts can be transformed into partners and pioneers." As the communication array activated and began transmitting to the hostile fleet, Marcus realized that the next few minutes would determine whether quantum consciousness would usher in a new golden age of galactic cooperation or trigger the most devastating conflict the galaxy had ever seen. The revolution that had begun with a mocked human maintenance worker was about to face its greatest test.